we are going to make some fried catfish with homemade tartar sauce and some fried or baked like French fries, like fish and chips essentially. And then we're going to prep some sourdough breads for tomorrow. So let's start by getting our potatoes ready for dinner. So I'm using russet ones, and I'm just going to kind of cut them in half like this so they kind of look like a chip. You know what I mean? Kind of do our little fish and chips. You don't want to cut them too thick, so not like potato wedges, but because you want them to crisp up nicely. And then we'll dress them with some seasonings, and we'll pop these in the oven. They're going to cook at 400 because our rolls are going to be cooking at 400. So let's get them in our big bowl right here. And then I'm just going to leave out my two little ends that are just primarily skin on it because my kids don't really like the skin of the potato so much. Okay. And we're doing a fried fish. We're doing not tilapia, catfish tonight because they were on sale and they looked pretty good at the store. So if we haven't had catfish, I was telling my kids, I'm like, catfish, have we ever had catfish? And I was like, we eat catfish all the time. Because I do make it very similar to my tilapia recipe, which is good. And you know, with catfish, it's like, it's either going to be delicious or it's going to be fishy. You never know if your catfish comes from like a dirty river or a lake, it can have a really like bottom feeder one, but these ones looked good and they had a good smell to them. So I'm hopeful we got some nice catfish cooking up. Okay. And cut our ends off here and going through. We had both my daughters had their soccer today, and it was actually kind of a nice day after our storms all weekend. You know, we had a lot of storms come through Tennessee, so it was cooler. It was about like in the 50s and 60s, not the 80s we had last week, but it was definitely nice, you know, to get outside and have some sunshine versus just gloominess. And my oldest daughter she goes and she practices at this indoor place, and they work on touches and ball control. So it was a full evening of sports. Tomorrow night we have another full night of sports. My daughter has like a showcase event to go to, so she'll be there doing soccer for like 3 to 4 hours. Here we go, last potato. Again, we're just going to make our wedges through. Then we're going to dress them with some olive oil, Lowry's seasoning, salt, onion powder, a bit of flour, some pepper, and some seasonings just to give them a really nice flavor because I want to have a good flavor on our fries. Okay. Got our bowl here. We're going to give a good drizzle of olive oil, about, 2 tablespoons, because you want enough to really kind of coat all of the potatoes for our home like fries so that they'll be nice and crispy with our fresh fish that we're going to fry up. So we're going to put some onion powder in. You want about a tablespoon of onion powder. And then we're going to use some Lowry seasoned salt. About, I want to say, maybe a teaspoon and a half. And I'm going to put about a half a teaspoon of black pepper. And a little bit of Mrs. Dash's table blend. This will just give a kind of an all-around seasoning mix to it. And we're going to put just about a tablespoon, maybe 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour in here. That's going to give it kind of a nice little crust on our French fries, so they'll kind of crisp up nicely with a nice little seasoned batter with it. Okay, we're just work with our fingers and really kind of coat our potatoes here with all of the seasonings and the oil. And you want to make sure you really get in there, so you'll have to break any of your pieces of potatoes that have stuck together, because you want to make sure that there's good seasoning on all of them. Here we go. Perfect. And then Let me grab, I have a big baking sheet, and we're going to lay these out on our baking sheet, and we're going to just make sure that we don't have any on top of each other because you want them all to crisp up nicely. So I'm using a 1.5 sheets, which fits the whole width of my oven, which is nice because you just have more baking room. And again, we're going to spread these potatoes out. Just make sure, they like to stick together. So you just want to make sure you push them all apart, because if they're stuck together, then what will happen is those will be more like a soggy potato. They won't crisp up as nicely. That's why you want to use a nice big baking sheet as well. Here we go. Perfect. And I like to bake mine straight on the metal pan versus putting down parchment paper, because I feel like it gives a nice crisp up on it versus the parchment paper, I think, makes it a little bit more chewy. Here we go. Almost have them all spread out. Okay, I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse, and then we're going to pop these in the oven and let them start roasting up. Okay.
Yeah, 2 questions. What fruit and veggies are you doing tonight?
Tonight we are going to do a hammy melon because we have that needs to cut up, and my daughter really wanted me to cut up a dragon fruit, so we have a dragon fruit as well. And then our vegetables, we're going to have our home fries, which aren't really a vegetable, but they are potatoes. But we're going to also have a salad with them. And then we're going to bake up some lovely rolls that we prepped earlier, sourdough rolls. And that's kind of rounds out our dinner tonight.
And the other question is, you ever do anything with crock pots?
You know what? I used to do a lot with crock pots, and now that I'm home more often, I don't. Sometimes I do an Instapot, but I find that if I do it, I do just a Dutch oven because I'm not gone for, like, when I used to work outside of the home, I used to do it all the time, but I don't do it as much. Okay, let's start prepping our batter for the fish. Let me just throw these potatoes away, and then I move my cutting boards around. So we're going to make our breading first, our seasoned dredge, and then we'll whip up our eggs. So we're going to add in about 1.5 cups or to close to 2 cups of all-purpose flour. And then we're going to season it up. So we're going to use some Mrs. Dash's table blend. We want about, I want to say, a good maybe 2 teaspoons. And then we are going to add in about 2 teaspoons of paprika. Now, paprika has a really mild flavor, but it also gives a really pretty color to the fish when you fry it up. We're going to add in about 1/2 teaspoon of ground black pepper. Now, if you like it a bit more spicy, you can add in some cayenne pepper, and that can give you a little heat. We're going to add in about 1 tablespoon of onion powder. There we go. And then some Old Bay seasoning. And this, we're going to put about 1 tablespoon of Old Bay seasoning in here. So that's about, there we go. And then last, just a little bit of Lowry's in here, about 1 teaspoon. And then I'm going to use my fork, and we're going to mix this up. And this is going to be our seasoned dredge, and then we're going to add a little bit of panko breadcrumbs to this so that when we do the second coat, it will have a nice crunchy layer on it, which is just delicious. There we go. Mixing it. You want to just make sure you get it all mixed up, because a lot of times you have little pockets that just like to hide in there. Okay, and then we're going to be using 4 eggs for this. We have about 2.5 pounds of catfish. I'm going to cut them up into smaller pieces, so they're more like a fish tender, I guess, like a chicken tender size. So a little bit smaller, and that way we'll get more because they're pretty big fillets here. little eggshell. Doesn't want to come out always. I always hate when you get one in there. There we go. Okay, let me get a paper towel here. We're gonna whip these eggs up. So I'm just gonna use my fork that I was over here, pop all the yolks, and then we're gonna whip them up. And today we're gonna do a straight up egg mish. Sometimes I'll add like milk or cream or buttermilk in it too, but today we're just gonna do a straight up egg one, which will give you a bit more of a crispy fry versus a spongy fry. There we go. You just want to make sure they're whipped up pretty good. Perfect. Okay, let's get our fish into their things. So I'm going to first, so in your fish, you have your main little there's like a line down the middle. I'm going to cut down that line to kind of divide our fillets into kind of a long one. So you always kind of want to go with the grain of your fish. There we go. And again, I'm going to find this middle one and we're going to kind of cut along that. Because if you try to cut outside of one of those lines, your fish is going to just kind of flake apart. So you want to work with your fish. This guy, he's really long, so I'm going to cut him in half and then I'm going to do it down the middle. Here we go. And perfect. So they're just going to be kind of like your little, almost like fish sticks. And we're going to cut down this guy. Nice down there through the middle. That way you're getting where that's essentially where like you have the spine of the fish. You're cutting right there. It's a natural break point. And then this guy's really long, so I'm going to kind of cut him as well. And this guy. There we go. So now we've got several little like fillet or fish sticks kind of here. Perfect. Get my knife there. And then this is my dirty hand. Here's my clean hand. I always say keep one hand clean and one hand dirty. That way it's easier to maneuver things. We're going to go through and we're going to stick all of our little fish and we're going to dredge it, which is kind of coating it with this seasoned flour first. There we go. And we want them to get all nicely coated with the good seasoning first. That's why I think it's really important to season your flour. A lot of people like to just do plain flour, but this is what's going to be sticking to the most to your fish. And the same thing with chicken. So you want it to have nice flavor. There we go. Because there's outside of the outside kind of crust on your fish, there's really no way to season it when you're breading it like this. So you want to just make sure it's well seasoned. So I always put a lot of spices in there because very little actually makes it on your fish. Here. Perfect. And then we're going to make a lovely homemade tartar sauce because I am not a fan of store-bought tartar sauce. And it is so easy to make yourself. It's so simple and just so delicious. So we'll make that up because I love my fried fish with a good helping of tartar sauce. Just 3 more. And this is our dredging stage. And our seasonings that we used in here was paprika, black pepper, Lowry seasoning salt, Old Bay seasoning, and some onion powder, and a little bit of Mrs. Dash's table blend. Okay, so here's my clean hand. We're going to put in about a cup to a cup and a half of seasoned panko breadcrumbs. You want to use seasoned because it just gives you more flavor. We can just mix that up. Perfect. Just give it a good toss. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do the egg wash and then into our crumb mixture here. So the dredging helps your little egg stick really well to your fish. Otherwise, it has a tendency to slide right off. So that flour coating really gives you it something to cling to. There we go. So we've got our first one. And just a quick dip. in here. And that's why I always say just do one hand, because as you can see, it's very, very messy. So I always try to keep one hand free just in case something arises and you need a clean hand. So here is our egg wash, and now we're putting it in our seasoned flour with panko breadcrumbs. And I just like to kind of pat it on and smush it down so it stays on, because you don't want your breading to fall off while you're frying it. There we go. And that's what happens a lot of times if you don't do that first dredge with the flour. If you just do straight to egg wash, then flour, your breading will fall off when you fry it. And another trick to also keep it from falling off is you want to minimize the amount that you're touching, like, or turning it while you're frying it. Just keep it to kind of two like flips, so that the more you mess with it, it's more likely to fall off.
You have a question? Do the children like fish?
Oh yes, they love fish. They love fish pretty much any way I make it. So whether it's fried or pan seared or grilled or broiled in the oven, they love it. And I think mainly because I have fed them fish since they were really little, so they've all kind of just grown up with it. And I mean, I will say their two favorites are salmon and tilapia. None of my kids really care for cod, which is strange because I feel like that's the fish that most kids have because that's what's in fish sticks. But they don't care for that one as much. And they like snapper. And my daughter, when we were in Fort Lauderdale and Miami, like 2 weeks ago for her soccer, I had her try corvina, and she loved it at a restaurant. So I try to have my kids be adventurous in the fact that they have to try everything. Now, if they don't like it, that's fine, but I do always want them to try stuff. So that, because you never know if you're going to like something, and I want them to keep an open mind. There we go. And for me, I grew up eating like all sorts of things, but my mother is Swedish, and my grandparents moved all around. My grandfather was a nuclear physicist, so he lived in California for a while, was in Sweden, Germany, Milan, and then they were in Spain. So he cooked so many different cuisines for us when he would come and visit, that we just were always used to trying everything. And I've had some crazy stuff. And so I try to have our kids eat a wide variety as well. Here we go. We've got 2 more after this, and looks like we have just the perfect amount of breading. I always love it when I have very little waste.
You have a question? Is there a specific cuisine or type of food that you yourself don't really care for?
For me, myself, um, anything super spicy, I can't handle the spice. But I mean, I love Indian food when it's mild, or Thai food when it's mild, but if it gets spicy, I can't. I don't think there's any cuisine that I really won't eat. I pretty much eat everything. I think that's also being a factor of a big family. I'm the youngest of 10, and you really just had to eat what was in front of you, and you had to eat fast if you wanted seconds. So I've been told I'm a very fast eater, but you had to fight for that seconds. And my mom always used to say, the food's not going to disappear. And I'm like, if you want seconds, it is. There we go. So we've got our last one breaded along with my fingers. So I'm going to take our little mixes here, and then I'm going to give my breaded fingers a quick wash. There we go. And that's the one thing with breading. There's really no way to get around it completely coating your hands. That's why I always try to keep one hand clean. Okay.
You have a question? Does your husband ever cook?
He does occasionally, as in when I say occasionally, very infrequently. But you know what? Some people have strengths in other areas, and we let those shine. Like if I need anything fixed or built, my honey to-do list is, by the way, like Always. I get an idea all the time and I'm like, "Hey, can you build me this?" Like, when we go over to the oven, I'll show you my 10-foot dining room table he built me because I didn't want to spend $5,000 on a table and he built it for me for less than 500. So, he does other things and while I'm cooking, he does the kids like most of the time he does their homework with them and their chores. Right now he's videotaping, but the same thing. I'll clean up the kitchen and he does the nighttime routine and their homework, which is wonderful because I don't have the patience for that all the time. Okay, we've got our oil heating up here. We're going to get our rolls ready to go in. So we made these rolls during our lunch stream. These are a hybrid sourdough roll. So they use sourdough starter and about a half a teaspoon of yeast. So not much. And we're just going to give them a quick coat with some melted butter. And then we're going to pop these in at 400 for about 15 minutes. And so we'll coat them with a little bit of the butter now and a little bit of butter when they come out. But these are going to be delicious. So they're not a true sourdough, but they did it was such a minuscule amount of yeast that the starter actually helped with the rise and we had to do the stretches and folds. So it's kind of like a cheat, but it's a great way to turn something out because doing a true sourdough takes like a day and a half to 2 days. So it's nice to be able to cook up some fresh bread that isn't something that is as labor intensive. So we're going to pop these in the oven at 400. So I'm going to move my home fries down. Let me grab my thing. And I'm going to put these on the top because I do like my bread to cook up at the top. But we have our beautiful home fries cooking here. We're going to slide them down. I'm going to put our rolls right up here. So they did double in size. I'm going to set my timer for 15 minutes so I don't forget about them. But a lot of that is that starter. Once, we had an active starter and it bubbled up nicely to be like just perfect for it. Okay, we've got our oil warming up. We need a nice hot oil before we throw our fish in. So while we're waiting for that to get nice and hot, let's start prepping our sourdoughs for tomorrow. So I have all my ingredients over here. We're going to do our traditional loaf, which is everyone's favorite. And then we're going to do a kind of a dessert loaf, which is a caramel, apple, and cinnamon. So we've got these little caramel bits that can go into it. And we fed my starter after we did our rolls. And got a lot of things for this one today. But I like to get them started so you guys can see the inclusion process. So we're going to make the dough and then the inclusion is when we add our ingredients in. So we're going to start out with our sourdough is 100 grams of active bubbly starter.
You have a question, you fry in olive oil?
Yes, I do fry in olive oil because I just like to keep one oil in our house instead of multiples. But I know like peanut oil and canola oil are great. I never keep my olive oil so hot that it gets to the smoking point. I like to keep it at a nice 350, which works for. But I'm going to test it and see if it's at my nice bubble range. So there we go. See, when you put the water in and you get the nice bubble. Now I'm going to turn it down to 5, which is medium heat. And we're going to saute our fish at medium. They're nice and golden.
Have you ever done a pepperoni and mozzarella bread?
I haven't done a pepperoni one. That was actually on my list to do because my husband loves pepperoni. I am not a huge fan of it, but I have done a mozzarella one, like a pizza bread type thing. So I was planning to do one. That was one of my ones coming up this week because I saw somebody do it and I was like, oh, I could totally make that easy. So we've got 100 grams. You want an active starter, so mine is nice and bubbly here. That lets you know it's active. I'm going to give it a little stir, and then we're going to use 100 grams of this. Always use a scale. It's just so much more active or accurate than using like the US customary like cups, because if you don't know, but you can pack a cup and it can be anywhere between 50 grams off, which is almost a third of a cup, which means you could be adding too little flour or too much flour. And so all like the great bakers, they really do use measurements like grams because it is so accurate. And unlike cooking, baking is something that you have to be accurate on. It's essentially a form of organic chemistry. Okay, so we've got 100 grams of active starter in each one. And then we're going to add 375 grams of warm water. So you got to have warm water. And that's about 1.5 cups. There we go. And you want to make sure it gets back to 0 for each one. Perfect.
You got a question about the starter? How do you make that?
So it takes about a week to make one that's ready for bread, and it is equal parts flour and water, and you mix them in there, and then every day you add equal parts flour and water, and at the third day you start discarding half. But I do have a video on the link of our page and a recipe card also on the link of our page that shows you how to do it if you want to do it yourself. It is a long process, but it is not a difficult process. So now I'm stirring up our starter into our water because I want it to dilute or dissolve, not dilute, in there so that when it goes into the flour, it will go in equally. I'm going to just check on my fish right over here, see how they're cooking up. Fish is one of those ones that it doesn't take long. They still need maybe a minute or two. Let's look at this one. That one's good. But as you can see, this side of my pan's a little bit hotter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick rotate because my frying pan's a little bit bigger than my burner. But there we go. Those will turn in just a second. We're going to add about 2 teaspoons of salt, which is between 8 to 10 grams to each loaf. So that's 1, 2, 1, and 2. And then for my bougie loaf, we're going to add about a tablespoon of cinnamon. So I'm just going to eyeball it here because it doesn't matter if you go a little over or under. And I like to add it in this first stage. Mix it up, try to get it underneath your thing because it will cling on there. Okay. And now we're going to add 500 grams of unbleached bread flour. That's about 3 cups. So we've got 1, 2, and there we go. 500 for that. I'm going to flip these real quick over here since they should be ready. I like to keep a nice eye on, but I do turn it down so my heat isn't super hot because the trick with frying things is you want to go low and slow versus hot because you want to have a nice golden crust and your fish cooked all the way through. And if your oil is too hot, what happens is you burn the outside before your inside is cooked.
You got a question? Can you go over the breading when you get a moment?
Yes. So let me get this on here and I'm going to tar it off. And so the breading is we start off with 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. Then I added in about a tablespoon of onion powder, a teaspoon to a teaspoon and a half of paprika, about a tablespoon of bay. I got to read it. For some reason, it's blanking on me. Old Bay. There you go. Old Bay seasoning. And a teaspoon of Lowry seasoning salt, some Mrs. Dash's tables blend. And then you mix that all up, and that's what you're going to dredge your fish in. And then you're going to add it, once you've dredged them, and then you do the egg wash, you're going to add in about a cup to a cup and a half of seasoned panko breadcrumbs. And that's going to get your mix. But we will post this stream on the link on our page afterwards. There we go. Now I'm going to use my dough whisk here. So this is a dough whisk, and it is great because the flour and the liquid will pass through, and we're going to mix this up. There we go. And I will say sticky or sourdough bread starts out sticky, but as the flour rehydrates, it becomes less sticky with time. So I've got my first loaf mixed up nicely here. You can see the nice cinnamon in here. It gives it a kind of a light brown color. Almost looks as if it's like a whole wheat bread. And then we're going to mix up this, but let's get our fish off. Let me check to see if it's ready, and we can put our next batch in. Let's see. Beautiful, nice golden fish tender here. And I always put the oil side down because I want it to be absorbed in the paper towel to leave a nice crispier fish. If you put the oil side up, it can be soggy.
You have a question? The chips are essentially fries, yes?
Yes. I just like to call them fish and chips to make it sound more like bougie British, you know, like you did something extra special. They're not true like American potato chips, but in Britain, they call their French fries when they serve them with fish and chips. So just me being bougie. But yes, they are essentially like home fries. I just cut them in a slightly different shape to make it look more like a chip, you know? But they're delicious. This is, I will say, my 9-year-old who does not like potatoes really in any form. She likes them like this because she likes them when they get really crispy on the sides. She says, I only like the crispy ones, the ones that are more closer to burnt. That's what she likes. Okay, we've got this guy whipped up too. And now we're going to let them sit and hydrate. And then in a little bit, we're going to do our stretch and folds, and we'll do our first inclusion with them. So they got to sit for about, a few minutes to kind of dry out. While that is doing, we're going to make our tartar sauce. We got to cut up our melon. We've got lots of things. So let me grab my cutting board over here. I've got we cut our potatoes on there. I'm going to wash my knife. It got a little bit of flour on it. So my favorite thing with homemade, like with fried fish, is tartar sauce. It's delicious, but it's got to be homemade. It's super simple. We're just going to start out with some mayo. Sorry, I got a little tickle in my throat. We're going to put about a half a cup. So I'm going to just kind of get as much out of here. We're running low, but I should have a half a cup on here. And tartar sauce is just delicious. There we go. So we got about a half a cup of mayo. Let me grab my lemon right over here. Okay. So we want one red onion, not a full one. This is about 1/4 of a red onion. So I'm just going to take off this outer one, and you're going to do a really fine mince on it. So we're going to slice it up and mince it really small because you don't want your chunks to be too big. And it has to be a red onion. It can't be a yellow or a white one because you want a mild. You could use shallots if you had them. But red onions are the perfect blend because they're a very mellow onion. They're not as astringent as yellow and white onions. So we're going to do really fine kind of mince up just because you just don't want any huge chunks of onions in your tartar sauce. There we go. And we're going to add these into our mayo. And then you need some pickles. We're just going to use one pickle. So like one pickle spear. Or you could use about 2 baby pickles. And you're going to want like a kosher, like a dilly pickle. You don't want a sweet pickle because you want that nice salty one. And we're just going to kind of mince it up as well. There we go. So give a nice things. Again, you don't want to have huge chunks of pickles in there because you want it all to be kind of mellow. Perfect. Go. And now let's flip our fish here. There we go. Perfect. I like to do a mix of tongs and spatulas because you want to try to handle them as little as possible to keep that breading on. But you see how we just have this lovely golden crust? Then we're going to use some fresh dill. Now you can use dried dill if you want. You'll use actually probably a little bit less of the dried dill than you would the fresh. So I'm using about 4 to 5 sprigs here. What we're going to do is we're just going to pull off the stems of these so you just have the leaves. And with the dried dill, you'd probably use about between 1/4 and 1/2 of a teaspoon. So you don't need much. Dried dill just has a bit more, it's a bit more flavorful than fresh one because it's actually like a lot more volume because once it's dried, it crushes down. So hear this. And when we smush this all up, it will be close to about a teaspoon of fresh dill. And we're going to mince it over nicely because, again, you don't want to have a whole little dill sprig in your tartar sauce. So we'll go over it a couple of times, just nice and fine. So here, so it's about a teaspoon of fresh dill minced up. And then we're going to use some fresh lemon juice. See if I can get some of these seeds out. You squeeze it in there, so just half a lemon. Perfect. And then we're just going to give it a nice stir. And this is going to be our delicious tartar sauce for our fish. There we go. Yes, this is my favorite. So we've got our tartar sauce right here, and I like to make it, let the dill kind of sit for a minute. It will really bring out the flavors. Okay. Let's see. Our rolls look like they're ready, so we'll grab them out. I'm going to turn my fish down just a teensy bit. And we'll see how our potatoes are looking because we are about on the home stretch here, just a little bit longer. Oh, beautiful.
You got a request to see the table?
Oh, yes. Right over here. So I've got my beautiful rolls. Look at them. That nice golden thing. So this is the 10-foot table that I had my husband build me because the one I wanted was $5,000. And, you know, we're a large family, so we need a lot of space. And then he built the banquette seating, and it goes all the way around the window. So it's pretty awesome. And it has like a lovely velvety smooth texture from it. But like he got all the supplies from Home Depot and he built it. Okay, these are our beautiful sourdough discard rolls. The butter gives them that nice golden brown cover on the top. I'm going to take this batch of fish out because it is ready. We've got one more batch to fry up. Beautiful. Look at those lovely crispy tenders, or fish, not tenders, fish fillets. We made chicken tenders the other day, and they looked a lot like this. There we go. So we've got our last little batch in here cooking up. I'm just going to take this out of the way. And what I like to do is not a true cleanup, but a quick cleanup so that I can use this space is just get a little bit of this off. So I'm not tracking flour everywhere. There we go. Okay. I can put this over here so I have a little bit of space. Here are my rolls that we took out. These are our delicious sourdough and yeast rolls. I'm going to take my butter here that's a little bit, while it's kind of melt or congealed up some, we're going to rub that over the top so it can remelt down because you want that nice kind of buttery rich flavor, and you need to do it when they're fresh out of the oven. There we go. Beautiful. And if you wanted to, you could drizzle a little bit of honey over the top of these or sprinkle them with sea salt too. Perfect. Okay. Let's get our salad made, our fruit cut up, and then hopefully our fishes will be done.
How many children do you have, and where are
I have 5 children, and 2 of them are taking showers after they're getting done with the sports, and the other 3 are playing with each other. And we have several playrooms in our room, so sometimes I'll see them peek their head out around the corner, and sometimes they like to join the streams. But again, it's completely up to them whether they want to come in or not. So sometimes you'll see them; they'll peek their head around, or they'll come through. Especially Teddy. He's my 3-year-old. We call him Chef Teddy. He loves to help me cook. He has a little kitchen stand where, he brings it up and he'll be here. So you might catch a glance of him if he so chooses. But this is the time where he gets to spend with his older siblings, because when they're, he stays home with me, and when they're at school, he doesn't see them all day, and then they're at sports. So this is typically his time to control them and do his bidding. He always gets them to play with him, play games with him, Legos, and they're pretty sweet big siblings for the most part. Okay, we're putting in, so we're just doing a basic garden salad here. So we've got some tomatoes, fresh peppers, and some baby cucumbers. There we go. We'll just take the tops off of these, and then we'll just do some slices. And my kids all love ranch, so they're going to just have it with some ranch dressing. I feel like that's a great way to introduce kids to salads, and then hopefully when they get older, they'll branch out from ranch. Here we go. So we've got our salad made, got our tartar sauce made. Let's get our hammy melon cut up. So I'm going to give my knife a little wash. I flipped my cutting board over so there will be no onion taste whatsoever. Here we go. Let's clean up this. And then if you've never had a hammy melon before, it looks like a cantaloupe, has a crunch like an Asian pear, and it's sweet like a honeydew melon. So it's delicious. So we'll cut it open. You can see it's got some nice seedy flesh in there. Get a spoon, and we'll cut it all out on here. But it's a very lovely melon, I will say. It's delicious. And if you've never had an Asian pear before, it has like a nice kind of crunch to it, which is different than a regular pear. A regular pear, has that gritty flavor, but an Asian pear is even grittier. It's like crunchy. And that's what this has. It has like a lovely flavor to it. Just going to cut off that bottom right there. Okay, and we're going to cut this up because we go through a lot of fresh fruit. We try to have fresh fruit with every meal. And I will say with 5 kids, we go through a ton, and it's a great way. I always like to say I'm not a short order cook. I won't cook my kids different meals than what we're having as a family, but I do make sure that I have something on the plate that every kid will enjoy. So most of the time, I know they will all like the fruit, or they'll all like the bread, and then they hopefully like the main course dish. So we're just going to slice through and just kind of cut it off. And we'll add it in here. And I always buy my own in fruit and cut it up, because it's like costs an arm and a leg. And you just have to slice it down. And when you do that, your curve runs will lay flat, which is then really easy for you to just run your blade straightly across your melon slice. That way you don't have to curve it along.
Oh, you have a question? What knives do you use?
This is Wusthof. It's a Wusthof Classic. I've had it since I got married, which is 16, 17 years ago. So it is still going strong. My whole knife set, I love it. And they're great. I sharpen them up when they need to be sharpened. I've not had any issues. So they are expensive, but they were, I think, an investment that was well worth it. Now, granted, I got it as a wedding gift, so I didn't pay for it. So maybe that's why. I say. Let's flip our fish here. There we go. And perfect. And it looks like we'll have just the right amount of oil in there. You know, sometimes when you're frying things, if you run low in oil, you just have to top off a little bit. But my rule is I don't put too much oil in, just enough to cover it about, a third of the way, halfway to a third of the way, because you'll flip and cook it that way. And that way you're not wasting oil. Okay. Let's get these. We got our thing. Our fish is almost done. Get our melon cut up here. Now, sometimes I'll leave it like full strips and my kids will eat it like a watermelon. But I do like to cut up some so that when we have extras, the kids can always just like pop right into the fridge and grab some, because it's hard to store the melon slices.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. What's the name of the melon again? And might as well spell it. And then, is there going to be any leftovers?
So the name of the melon is Hammy, which is Hami, and I think they're right in season right now because I've been seeing them at sale at both Costco, Aldi's, and Publix. And leftovers, we may or may not have leftovers, but all of our leftovers I send to my parents' house. So I like cook for my parents because they're really, really busy. And if they didn't, they'd like eat fast food or junk all the time. So I started cooking for my parents like, I want to say almost 10 years ago. And I cook all of their meals. So most of the time they either eat with us or they get our leftovers. So there's never any waste in here. So when I say I might be cooking for 7 right now, but I always plan for 9 and for them, unless they're traveling, which happens a lot too. Okay, we got 2 more, and then we'll grab our potatoes out of the oven. Hopefully they've got a nice crisp up on them.
So you have a question? Do your parents live close?
Yes, they live like 3 miles away. So very close. Sometimes too close, my husband says. But no, he loves them. My stepdad will be over here tonight because of course he needs toilet paper. And we do all their shopping for them. So they're always here, in and out. They take help with kids' sports too. Okay. Let's go grab our potatoes out of the oven since we are almost down for the count. We'll turn these down just a smidge. Oh, beautiful. They've got that nice, perfect crisp on them. Perfect. So these are our fish and chips. So our chips to go with them, we're going to let them sit for just a second there. And let me get my hammy melon right over here. So these were our potatoes, our russet potatoes that we cut nice and thin, and then we seasoned with olive oil, a little bit of flour, onion powder, Lowry seasoned salt, and Mrs. Dash's table blend to give you kind of that steak fry crispy thing. We're going to let them sit for a second, and then I'll go under with a spatula to put them up. But while we do that, I'm going to chop up my onion for our bread real quick because we're just about done.
That's an apple.
It is an apple. Once you watch me, you're going to realize I misspeak all the time because my brain is in 10 other places. So, yes.
I have a quick question. Are you an only child?
I am not an only child. I'm the youngest of 10. So, I'm the farthest thing from an only child. Whoop. Sometimes I wished I was an only child. But no. I have a big family. I have 7 brothers and 2 sisters. And of course, I was the favorite. But no, big family. So I guess I'm used to when people say I have a big family. To me, I'm like, it's not that big. But I realize that most people don't grow up with so many siblings. And there's a pretty big age gap between it. So my mom had 7, and then my dad had 3 from a previous marriage. So I have 3 older half brothers, but they're like awesome. And then I've got my crazy lot, which are extra crazy.
Who's the best cook out of the siblings?
Me.
Yeah,
It is. I'm the one who cooks Thanksgiving dinner for like 50 people every year. Mainly because I don't know why. None of my 2 sisters can't really cook. But my brothers, one of my brothers is a pretty good cook. And then my brother-in-law, I have a brother-in-law who's a fantastic cook. We're going to just take these off. Let them sit for just a second. Want to get all that oil cooking. There we go. This is our delicious fried catfish that we will serve with our fish and chips. And then I'm just going to mince up these apples because I'm going to do a quick inclusion and a fold and stretch because I want to let the fish cool off a minute before I serve it up so that it doesn't get drenched. And then potatoes. I always let my potatoes sit and firm up before I try to scrape them off the pan. Otherwise, they kind of stick a little bit and they won't come off. So we're using just 1 apple, and this is going to be for our caramel apple sourdough that we started prepping. You want to mince your apples up really good because I don't like to have super huge chunks of fruit in my sourdough, more like little tasty morsels. So here, so we've got almost like a nice mince on the apples. And just 1, because 1, as you can see, makes a good amount of apple. I'm going to sprinkle them with a little bit of cinnamon.
You got a question. How many cousins among all the...
There is like, where's my sugar? There's about 30 some cousins between all of them. You know what? There's a lot. I haven't counted up. Like I have 5. One of my sisters has 5 as well. And then I have 3. 5 of them have 3 kids. So there's a lot. I haven't actually made an official count. So we're doing cinnamon sugar here. Just going to toss it up real nice. There we go. So here's our cinnamon sugar apples. And this is what the stretch and fold process is in sourdough. So we're going to put our cinnamon apples in here. And then I didn't put a lot of sugar in this dough because we're going to be putting caramel balls in it. So it's a caramel apple sourdough. Does that anything sound more delicious? We're going to put about a 1/2 cup in here.
Yeah, one of my favorite questions. Do you cook like this every night?
Oh, yeah. I make most of our food every single night. We're a big family, so going out to eat is expensive, and it's not really enjoyable with little ones. So that's, I think, it's just not fun to go out to eat with a 1 and a 3-year-old because especially my 1-year-old, he is like, oh, I love him to death, but he is going to be the death of me. He's my hardest kid so far, and he's, of course, my last. So here we've got our fold and stretch, and this is our inclusion. I'll do another fold and stretch every 30 minutes for the next 2 hours. And then this is my regular one, and you just do a simple fold and stretch. If the dough sticks to you, you can wet your fingers or you can coat them into flour, but sourdough is a sticky dough, but you don't have to worry. Like, you're not doing anything wrong. It's just a high hydration dough. Okay, we've got those. Wash it up, and then we're going to serve up dinner. Okay, let me get a plate and a spatula. Okay, so let me just slide this right here. We're going to do our potatoes first. So I'm going to get under them. You see, once you do it, look at this. You get them, they pop up nice. But if you try to pull them off right away, they won't come off nicely. And I always like to make them into a big pile so they don't dry out too much. There we go. But look at this delicious kind of crispy fish and chips. So we've got our nice right here. And then let's get some catfish. So you've got our lovely fried catfish. And you can't have catfish without our homemade tartar sauce. And of course, when we get tongs for our salad, we'll have our beautiful salad. We'll have our hammy melon on the side. And of course, our beautiful sourdough roll. So this is our panko crusted catfish with homemade chips, which are French fries, a sourdough discard roll, homemade tartar sauce, and a delicious garden fresh salad for just a frickin' easy meal. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what we're cooking and feeding our family. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And also feel free to comment or message us with any cooking questions we have or whatnot. And again, we always upload our videos to the link on our page, so you can always access these recipes. I do try to get out recipe cards out, but that is the quickest way if you want to remake anything you've seen here today. Again, thank you so much. Don't forget to like and subscribe.